What if 10,000 samurai met 10,000 Vikings on the same battlefield? 10,000 samurai. 10,000 Vikings. One field, one battle. No guns, no cannon, no modern anything. Just two of the most feared warrior cultures the world has ever produced, standing face to face across open ground about to answer a question people have argued about for centuries. Who wins? It sounds simple, it is not. Because these two armies come from opposite ends of the earth, separated by thousands of miles and in their peak forms by centuries of time. They never met in real history. They fought completely different kinds of war, with completely different weapons, different armor, different ideas about what a warrior even is. Putting them on the same field is not a fair fight between similar forces. It is a collision between two entirely different answers to the same question: how do you kill the man in front of you? So let's actually think it through. Not with fantasy, with how these two forces really fought. First, meet the Vikings. The Viking is a raider and a warrior from the cold north, the Scandinavia of roughly the 8th to 11th centuries. He is big, strong, and raised in a brutal world where violence is a fact of life. His weapons are simple and savage: a round wooden shield, a single-handed axe or a sword, a spear. And for the strongest, the two-handed Dane axe, a weapon that can split a shield, a helmet, and the man wearing them in a single blow. But the heart of the Viking way of war is not any single weapon. It is the shield wall. The Vikings lock their round shields together into a solid line, a wall of wood and iron, and behind it they push forward as one. Spears jab through the gaps, axes hook down shields. It is close, brutal, shoving, hacking combat, a grinding contest of strength and nerve where the line that breaks first loses. The Viking is built for the crush, for the moment when two walls of men slam together and it becomes a butcher's work of muscle and steel. Now meet the samurai. The samurai is a professional warrior of Japan, and here we have to be careful because the samurai changed enormously over time. But take the classic samurai of the feudal age, and you get something very different from the Viking. The samurai is not primarily a shield and axe brawler. In his earliest and most iconic form, he is a horseman and an archer. The bow, the yumi, is central to his art. The samurai way of war begins at a distance, with arrows from horseback with astonishing skill. And then there is the sword. The katana, the most famous blade in history, a curved, single-edged weapon of folded steel, designed not for hacking through shields but for the precise, fast, deadly cut. The samurai trains his entire life in the discipline of the blade, in speed, in timing, in the perfect economy of a single killing stroke. His armor is not the mail and leather of the north. It is lamellar, small plates of iron and lacquer laced together, lighter and more flexible than it looks, built to turn arrows and blades while letting the wearer move. So already you can see the problem with the question. This is not two versions of the same soldier. This is a wall of shields and axes against a force of horse archers and swordsmen. It is mass and crush against speed and range. And the battle would be decided not by who is braver. They are both fearless, but by which style of war can impose itself on the other. Let's run the battle. The two armies form up across the open field. 10,000 Vikings lock into their shield walls, a long grinding line of wood and iron, roaring, banging weapons against shields, daring the enemy to come and be crushed. This is exactly the battle the Viking wants. A straight line, a straight fight, wall against wall. But the samurai does not give him that battle, and that is the first key to the whole thing. Because the samurai army does not charge into the shield wall. The samurai army has horse archers, and horse archers do not want to close with a wall of axes. They want to ride and shoot and never let the enemy touch them. The mounted samurai sweep along the front of the Viking line, loosing arrows in dense, disciplined volleys, and then wheeling away before the Vikings can close the distance. For the Vikings, this is a nightmare, and it is the same nightmare that heavy infantry has faced against horse archers all through history. The shield wall is superb at absorbing a charge. It is helpless against an enemy that refuses to charge. The Vikings raise their shields against the arrows, and the shields save many of them. The round shield is good, and Viking discipline is real. But they cannot fight back. They cannot reach the horsemen. Every time they surge forward to close the gap, the samurai simply ride away and keep shooting. The Viking army is a fist that cannot land a punch, being bled arrow by arrow, unable to do the one thing it exists to do, which is grab the enemy and crush him. Picture it from inside the shield wall. A Viking hears the drumming of hooves before he sees anything, a sound rolling along the line. Then the horsemen sweep across the front, low in the saddle, and the sky goes dark for a heartbeat as thousands of arrows arc up and fall. Shields come up. Most arrows thud into wood or glance off iron rims, but not all. Here and there a man cries out and drops, an arrow through a shoulder, a thigh, an eye. And then the horsemen are already gone, wheeling away, and the Vikings are left roaring at empty ground, shaking their axes at an enemy that will not stand and fight. Again the hooves, again the dark sky, again the fall of men who cannot strike back. It is not the death a Viking wants. There is no glory in being shot down by a rider you never touched. This is the samurai's great advantage: mobility and range, the ability to hurt the enemy without being hurt in return. And in the early phase of the battle, it tilts everything toward the samurai. The Vikings take losses they cannot answer, and their fury grows because there is nothing a Viking hates more than an enemy he cannot reach. But the battle is not over, not close. Because the samurai advantage has a limit, and the Vikings have advantages of their own that have not come into play yet. The first limit is arrows. No army carries infinite arrows. A horse archer can only shoot so many times before the quivers run dry, and 10,000 Vikings behind shields are a very large number of men to kill with arrows alone. The samurai can bleed the Vikings, wound them, thin them, break their formation in places. But archery alone will not destroy 10,000 determined men in a shield wall. Sooner or later the arrows run low, and the battle has to be decided up close. And up close is where everything changes. Because when the arrows are spent and the two forces finally collide, the samurai loses the thing that made him dominant: his range, his mobility. And now he is in the exact fight the Viking has been screaming for since the battle began. The crush, the grind, shield against blade at arm's length, where strength and mass and the brutal simplicity of the axe come into their own. Here, the Viking is terrifying. The katana is a magnificent weapon, but it is not designed to fight a shield wall. It is a cutting sword, and cutting into a wall of iron-rimmed wood and heavy northern muscle is a hard, bad job. The Dane axe, on the other hand, is designed for exactly this. It hooks the shield down and splits the skull behind it. The Viking shield wall, once the horsemen are forced to dismount or are dragged into the press, is a machine built for precisely this moment, the close, heaving, blood-soaked crush where the North has always excelled. Picture this half of the battle too. The arrows stop. The horsemen, out of shafts, draw their swords, and now they must do the thing they spent the whole battle avoiding. They must close. And the Vikings, who have been bleeding and raging for an hour with no way to answer, finally get what they have been screaming for. The two forces slam together, and the shield wall does what it was born to do: shields lock. Spears jab through the gaps into horses and men. The great Dane axes rise and fall, hooking shields aside, cleaving through lacquered armor, and the disciplined Viking line grinds forward step by bloody step. The samurai, superb swordsmen, find that their speed and precision mean less in a heaving crush where there is no room to swing, no space to move, only the shove and the press and the axe coming down. The elegance of the blade drowns in the brutality of the wall. This is the North's battle. And in it, the Viking is as unstoppable as the samurai was at range. There is one more thing that would shape this fight, and it is not a weapon at all. It is command. The Vikings were ferocious, but their armies were often collections of warbands, each following its own chieftain, bound by loyalty and reputation more than by a single unified chain of command. In a straight collision, this hardly matters because a shield wall does not need complex orders. It needs to hold and push. But it means the Viking force is less flexible, harder to redirect once the battle is joined. The samurai, especially in the great feudal armies, fought under a far more organized structure, with clear ranks, banners, and signals for control, and commanders who could maneuver whole formations during a battle. This is exactly the kind of control that makes a hit-and-run war of arrows possible in the first place. You cannot fight a disciplined skirmishing battle with a mob. You need an army that can advance, wheel, pull back, and reform on command again and again without falling apart. The samurai had that. And on open ground, that flexibility is worth as much as the arrows themselves because it lets the samurai control the distance, control the tempo, and deny the Viking the one thing he needs: contact. So the deeper you look, the more the fight stops being about individual warriors at all and becomes about two whole systems of war. The Viking system built for the shattering collision of wall against wall. The samurai system built for control, range, and maneuver. And systems, in the end, are shaped by the ground they are forced to fight on. So the battle has two halves, and each side owns one of them. At range, the samurai dominate and the Vikings suffer. Up close, the Vikings dominate and the samurai suffer. And the real question, the thing that actually decides who wins, is this: can the samurai kill enough Vikings at range before the arrows run out to break them before the crush begins? Or can the Vikings survive the storm of arrows long enough to close the distance and drag the samurai into the kind of fight the North was born for? And here we reach the honest answer, the one that is more interesting than picking a winner. It depends on the ground, and the terrain decides the war. On a wide open flat plain, the advantage leans toward the samurai. Open ground is horse country. It gives the mounted archers room to ride, to circle, to keep their distance and bleed the shield wall for hours. On a flat open field, the Vikings might never get to fight the battle they want. They could be worn down and broken before they ever land a blow, the same way horse archers broke heavy infantry from the steppes of Asia to the fields of Europe. But put that same battle in the tight, broken terrain the Vikings knew best. A narrow valley, a coastline, a forest edge, a river crossing, and everything flips. In close terrain, the horses lose their room to run, the samurai cannot keep their distance. They are forced into the press early on the Vikings' terms, and now the shield wall and the Dane axe rule the day. In the tight ground, the North wins. That is the truth that the simple version of the question misses. There is no single answer to who wins, because the two armies are so different that the battlefield itself becomes the deciding warrior. Give the samurai open ground and time, and their range and mobility grind the Vikings down. Give the Vikings close ground and a fast collision, and their strength and their shield wall break the samurai apart. The weapons, the armor, the styles, all of it matters, but the ground matters more than any of it. And there is one more factor that no simulation can measure. Both of these cultures produced warriors who did not fear death. The Viking believed that dying gloriously in battle earned him a place in Valhalla, the hall of the honored dead. The samurai lived by a code that made death in battle not a tragedy but a fulfillment, a warrior's proper end. Neither of these armies breaks and runs the way an ordinary army does. Neither one hits the point of fear where soldiers throw down their weapons and flee. They fight past the point where other men would quit all the way to the end, which means a battle between them would not end when one side got scared. It would end when one side was quite simply all dead, so imagine it. 10,000 of the fiercest raiders of the north, and 10,000 of the most disciplined warriors of the east, neither willing to break, fighting on ground that favors one or the other until the field is silent and only one culture is left standing on a hill of the fallen. Who wins? On open ground, bet on the samurai and their arrows. On close ground, bet on the Vikings and their axes. And on any ground, bet that the cost would be so terrible that the word winner would barely mean anything at all. Of course, this is completely a what-if scenario, one of those questions that is fun to argue about and impossible to truly answer. But that is exactly why it is worth asking. So what do you think? Open field or narrow valley, arrows or axes, which culture takes the day? Write your answer in the comments and defend it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.